Welcome dear friends to my video lecture on education, the second unit, namely history, politics and economics of education. The unit 2, history, politics and economics of education. In this we try to give most important and essential ideas on each subheading, and then the most important question revolving around this topic. So that way it would be of great help to you to understand the concept. Any number of questions you can answer later on, but the most important theme I would like to introduce through this lecture on unit 2, the history of education, the economics of education, the politics of education, right? So first we are going to talk about the commissions, the various education commissions, and what are the important and essential points with regard to these commissions. We would like to discuss on that. Let us straight away enter into the units. Yes. Committees and commissions contribution to teacher education. This is in part A. Then Secondary Education Commission 1953, Kothari Commission, Education Commission 1964-66, National Policy on Education 1986-1992, National Commission on Teachers 1999, National Curriculum Framework 2005, National Knowledge Commission 2007, Yashpal Committee Report 2009, National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education 2009, Justice Verma Committee Report 2012. So this is in part A. What is in part B? Relationship between policies and education. What is a policy? What is a educational policy, etc. What is the linkage between educational policy and national development? How education helps in the national development. Then determinants of educational policy, that is factors of educational policy, and process of policy formulation. In the process of policy formation, some important ideas we are discussing. For an example, analysis of the existing situation, generation of policy options, evaluation of policy options, making the policy decision, planning of policy implementation, policy impact assessment and subsequent policy cycles. That is in part B of unit 2. Dear friends, please go by different parts, then you will be able to understand all the concepts. In part C, we are going to discuss on the concept of economics of education. There we are going to discuss on cost benefit analysis versus cost effective analysis in education. Then economic returns to higher education, that is a profit, gains in higher education for the society. Then signaling theory versus human capital theory, what does this mean? Then concept of educational finance or finance. So what is the concept of educational finance? Educational finance at micro and macro levels. Concept of budget. See, educational finance at micro level means at the school, at college level. Macro level means at the national level. So we are going to discuss on that, educational finance at the school, college level and at the national level. Then concept of budgeting. What is the meaning of budgeting? Budgeting for the school development, budgeting for the national development, something like with regard to education we will be discussing. Then part D. In part D we are having these topics, relationship between politics and education, perspectives of politics of education, liberal, conservative and critical perspectives of politics of education, liberal, conservative, critical. That is a liberal perspective of politics of education, conservative perspective of politics of education, critical perspective of politics. That way we are going to discuss. Then approaches to understanding politics, how to understand politics through various theories. For an example, behavioralism. Of course, what is seen in psychology we are just discussing here, but nevertheless it is applied here in the politics of education. Behavioralism, theory of systems analysis, and theory of rational choice. So these three theories we are going to discuss on approaches to understanding politics in education, politics of education. And theory, then education for political development and political socialization. What do you mean by political socialization? That is nothing but giving awareness to the students about the nature of politics, about the political issues in the country, like that. That is political socialization. So the education for political development and political socialization. Dear friends, these are the important points. Questions can be from any subheading. If you understand the concepts, then no problem. Any number of questions you will be able to hit correct. So I hope let me introduce the interesting and the most essential ideas on different committees now. Committees and commission's contribution to teacher education, that is Secondary Education Commission, 1953. What are the insights with regard to the Secondary Education Commission? It emphasized the need for a well-trained, competent teaching workforce. Very important. Say, because after independence, our political leaders were revising the entire machinery in India, including education, different areas of life. So education is one of the most important aspects. So they wanted to train the teachers in order to become super power for the students. So it emphasized the need for a well-trained, competent teaching workforce. Then it suggested improvement in teacher training institutions. It recommended in-service training for teachers to update their skills. So that's a very important one. What is the real purpose Secondary Education Commission? They emphasize the need for a well-trained, competent teaching workforce. So here we are talking about teacher education only. Further, Secondary Education Commission recommended this. That's how you have to see. Of course, so many other things they have spoken. But with regard to teacher education, this is what they have said. They emphasize the need for a well-trained, competent teaching workforce. Then they suggested improvements in teacher training institutions, quality in other words. They recommended in-service training for teachers to update their skills. These are the most important points with regard to Secondary Education Commission 1953. What are the educational implications of this Secondary Education Commission 1953? That is, it strengthened the teacher education infrastructure. It highlighted the importance of continuous professional development for teachers. This Secondary Education Commission led to the establishment of more teaching training colleges and programs. So these are the educational implications that happened. Because of this commission, these things happen. These are the outcomes of this commission in India. So that's how you have to see the educational implication. Now let us discuss on the Kothari Education Commission, 1964-66. What are the famous insights here? It advocated, Kothari Education Commission advocated for a comprehensive education system, including teacher education. It should not be compartmentalized education. It should be comprehensive. It should be interdisciplinary. That is the idea here, right? So teachers should be trained in an interdisciplinary manner. In other words, they should be knowing something of every other subject. That is why education is considered to be an interdisciplinary subject. I hope you understand this. So, Kothari Education Commission advocated for a comprehensive education system, including teacher education. It suggested integrated courses for pre-service teacher training, integrated courses, from various subjects. Then, it emphasized research in education and training methodology. First time, they are talking about research in education. 1964-66, Kothari Education Commission. Even training methodologies should be there, they stressed. Then education, what are the educational implications of Kothari Education Commission? It promoted a holistic approach to teacher education. Holistic approach means all-round development for the teachers. In every respect, they must be having some knowledge, a deep knowledge, so that they are able to form the students in a qualitative manner. So it promoted a holistic approach to teacher education. And this Kothari Education Commission led to the establishment of educational research institution. For the first time they spoke about research in education. So naturally they wanted to establish educational research institution. That happened, yes, no doubt about it. It encouraged a more scientific approach to teaching and learning. So another important thing, more scientific approach to teaching and learning, new methods, new methodologies, scientific methods, teaching models, all these things they were suggesting. So this is Kothari Education Commission. Now let us talk about National Policy on Education 1986-1992, stressed the professional development of teachers. So now further refinement perhaps in National Policy on Education 1986. After 1964, some gap of 20-25 years, this came about. National Policy on Education under Sri Rajiv Gandhi. So this National Policy on Education stressed the professional development of teachers. It introduced the concept of a district institutes of education and training, DIETs. DIETs came into existence because of this National Policy on Education 1986. Today we are having a lot of DIETs in all the districts. So this was done because of National Policy on Education, that we can understand. Then it focused on teacher education for both pre-service and in-service training. National Policy on Education focused on teacher education for both pre-service and in-service training. That is B.Ed, teacher training, pre-service. In-service training, whenever the new textbooks are coming, at that time in-service training is given to all the teachers in respective subject, that we know. So National Policy on Education focused on teacher education for both pre-service and in-service training. What are the educational implications with regard to National Policy on Education? It institutionalized structures for teacher education at district levels. It made structures, in other words. With regard to teacher education, certain structure was created at district level. That is DIET, District Institute of Educational, DIET, educational training. So institutional structures for teacher education at district level, that is DIET. Then promoted lifelong learning and continuous professional development for teachers. Training was given through DIETs for this. It promoted lifelong learning. Learning does not stop at one point. It goes on and on for teachers till their profession is over, perhaps till the end of their life even. They are teaching even after retirement, like me. So naturally it promoted lifelong learning and continuous professional development for teachers. Then it enhanced the quality of teacher education through new policies and programs. So once again, the quality of teacher education, time and again different commission talk about it. Now more refinement, 1986 National Education Policy, it promotes quality of teacher education through new policies and programs, especially in technology. First time they were speaking about technology in education, everything. And because of the technology came into education, and in 90s and all, we were doing wonderfully well with regard to technology. IT industry and all, people were calling the Indian students. That type of quality was given through the teachers. So it enhanced the quality of teacher education through new policies and programs, right? So these are all the educational implications of National Policy on Education. Next, the National Commission on Teachers, 1999. What are the most interesting and the most important insights here? National Commission on Teachers analyzed the status and working conditions of teachers. It analyzed the status and working conditions of teachers. First time they were worried about the welfare of the teacher, even the physical reality, their residential facilities, even salary, their quality of life. So that way National Commission on Teachers analyzed the status and working conditions of teachers. It highlighted the need for a code of professional ethics for teachers. First time they are doing this. Of course, before that it was there, but then it was felt that there should be a code of professional ethics for teachers. Even now it exists. A teacher do's and don'ts for teachers. A teacher is a professional. A 24 hours job. A teacher even at midnight is a teacher. No, that is the idea given through the code of professional ethics. Then it recommended reforms in teacher education curricula, another important thing. The curriculum was often modified now according to the science of the times and needs of the times, modern trends, etc. So that way, 1999, they recommended, this National Commission on Teachers recommended reforms in teacher education curricula. Teacher training curriculum or syllabus. What are the educational implications? This National Commission on Teachers led to the formulation of policies improving teachers' work environment. It emphasized the professionalization of teaching. It ensured ethical standards and accountability in the teaching profession. Very important thing. It led to the formulation of policies improving teachers' work environment, no doubt about it. It improved the teachers' welfare, no doubt. Salary-wise, it was increased and they were doing wonderfully well, and they were serving their teaching profession with a lot of satisfaction. So it led to the formulation of policies improving teachers' work environment. It emphasized the professionalization of teaching. A teacher is a 24 hours professional. Even at midnight, a teacher is a teacher. No, that was emphasized through the professionalization of teaching. It ensured ethical standards and accountability in the teaching profession. This National Commission on Teachers ensured ethical standards and accountability in the teaching profession. For the first time, Code of Conduct came into existence because of this one, National Commission on Education, 1919. Of course, it was there before this commission also, but it was not said in an emphatic manner. But the first time they were talking about the Code of Ethics through National Commission on Education, 2009. That way we can understand. 1999. Okay, then National Curriculum Framework, that is 2005. What are the most important insights with regard to National Curriculum Framework? It emphasized constructivist approaches to teaching and learning. That is more creative methods of teaching, creative approach for teachers as well as students. It emphasized constructivist approaches to teaching and learning, construction of the knowledge construction or knowledge expansion in a creative manner. So it emphasized constructivist approaches to teaching and learning. It recommended inclusive education practices, another important thing, to accept all types of students, whether average, gifted or poor students in the classrooms. It recommended inclusive education practices. Then it stressed the need for reflective and critical thinking in teacher education. It stressed the need for reflective and critical thinking in teacher education. Like once again, the creative efforts of teachers, in education. So the National Curriculum Framework was refining more and more teacher education in creative manner. In other words, what are the educational implications of National Curriculum Framework 2005? It shifted the focus from rote learning to understanding and critical thinking. Very nice one. Not only for the teachers, from the viewpoint of the students also. In fact, the teachers need to create in the student what you call understanding and critical thinking about the subject matter. So this is the educational implication of this one. That is National Curriculum Framework 2005. It shifted the focus from rote learning to understanding and critical thinking. It promoted inclusive education. So what is the specialty about this commission, namely National Curriculum Framework? Inclusivity. That is inclusive education. Inclusive education, we know today, Ulladakka Kalvi we are saying. That is, any student has the capability of educating himself in his own way. So we should help him out. whether he is defective in certain areas, whether he is dull or average or a brainy child, he should be given education at his level. So he should be accepted, in other words. So that way it stressed the need for reflective and critical thinking in teacher education. It shifted the focus from rote learning to understanding critical thinking, promoted inclusive education catering to diverse learning needs. That's why. So inclusive education, it is because of this National Curriculum Framework 2000. Already the idea came here. First time, no, they were talking about inclusive education practices emphatically in National Curriculum Framework. Then it inspired curriculum reforms in teacher education programs. That is, a National Curriculum Framework inspired curriculum reforms in teacher education programs. Now let us discuss on next commission after 2005-2007 National Knowledge Commission. So National Knowledge Commission identified knowledge gaps in various sectors including education. So a lot of knowledge gaps, there is a gap between the lip and the cup. I mean, there is a difference, in what we say and what we do, that type of thing. Likewise, knowledge gaps. What we are studying in the classrooms may not be applicable in real life situations. That type of knowledge gap. If you are studying in a technical institution, you should be able to do technical job in an efficient manner. It was not there. That is what the knowledge gap came into, be realized by National Knowledge Commission. So it identified knowledge gaps in various sectors including education. It recommended reforms to improve the quality of higher education and teacher training. So National Knowledge Commission 2007. It recommended reforms to improve the quality of higher education and teacher training. And also it highlighted the importance of technology in education. National Knowledge Commission highlighted the importance of technology in education. Of course, already it was there in 1986 National Policy on Education, but it was put into practice perhaps, through National Knowledge Commission. Some practical points were given. So it highlighted the importance of technology in education, 2007. Already we were in technological era after 2000. So it wanted to promote that through education. So highlighted the importance of technology in education, National Knowledge Commission. Then educational implications. What are the educational implications of National Knowledge Commission? It encouraged the use of ICT in teacher education. It enhanced the knowledge base and skill of teachers, very important. So a teacher is supposed to be, not supposed to be, he should be a technocrat. Technocrat means one who is skilled at operating various online educational aspects. So that way you should be skilled in computer operations. That way you should be a technocrat rather than mere giver of information. So that way it enhanced the knowledge base and skill of teachers. It promoted innovative practices in teacher training and education. It promoted innovative practices, creative practices in teacher education and training. Yashpal Committee Report. Very sorry, the power cut. Sorry, the tolerance or power cut, I don't know when This happen, I don't know how to behave also. No, I'm also new to this type of online education, but I hope it has come back again. Yeah, it has come back. Yes. Yashpal Committee Report 2009, it criticized the fragmentation of the education system. So fragmentation of the education, Yashpal Committee recognized that there were fragmented, the education itself was fragmented, means broken into different categories, like it was not unified whole. It's not a comprehensive thing, it was not united together. I mean, all the aspects of education system were not united, in other words. So it criticized the fragmentation of the education system. In other words, chemistry was separate, maths was separate, the education was separate. There was no what you call the comprehensive understanding of in general education. So that is why the fragmentation comes into existence. It criticized the fragmentation of the education system. It recommended the integration of teacher education with the higher education. Of course, the higher education should be integrated with the teacher education. Teacher education, mere methods and techniques should not be taught. Rather, it should be linked with the higher educational aspects. So that is what it recommended. See, the reason why we are talking about 4-year B.Ed course is because of that, perhaps the Yashpal Committee Report 2009, because it was separate. The educational training was separate, whereas the education was something different. They wanted to integrate both. That is why it recommended the integration of teacher education with higher education. Today we are doing that in new education policy 2020. Yashpal Committee Report 2009 emphasized interdisciplinary approaches in teacher education. So after that, that's what we are doing today also. More and more importance is given to teaching of the subject matter itself. Normally we used to be giving techniques, models, more training aspects, but it should be integrated with the content itself. Today more focus on the content, contextualized teaching. So that way it emphasized the interdisciplinary approaches in teacher education, Yashpal Committee, according to Yashpal Committee Report. What are the educational implications? Yashpal Educational Committee led to structural reforms in teacher education. Structural reforms. Today I think we are experiencing that structural reforms in different types of teacher education today. It promoted a more cohesive and integrated approach to teacher training. Cohesive, united, integrated. I mean, incorporating all other disciplines into teacher training that way. So it promoted a more cohesive and integrated approach to teacher training. In other words, theory and practice should go together. That is the integrated approach to teacher training. The very word training means practice. So what we are learning as theory should be put into practice. So that type of more cohesive and integrated approach to teacher education it promoted. Which one? This is Yashpal Committee Report. Then it encouraged interdisciplinary research and teaching practices. It talked about interdisciplinary research and teaching practices. Once again, we are realizing it in new education policy 2020. Today we are talking about research through interdisciplinary approaches. What you are doing in one discipline, you may be doing along with the other disciplines. Today you are, the students are expected to take any subject. Suppose if they are in a particular discipline, for example arts, they can take some science subjects. If they are in science subject, they can take even music, dancing, etc. That way, more interdisciplinary research, even not only studies, interdisciplinary research also is possible through this type of education. That is, Yashpal Committee Report recommended that. It encouraged interdisciplinary research and teaching practices. The next one, the National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education 2009. What are the most important insights with regard to National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education 2009? It provided a detailed framework for teacher education programs. It emphasized the socio-cultural context of education. It advocated for experiential learning and reflective practice. So it provided a detailed framework for teacher education program 2009, National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education. Because of that only new education policy perhaps, they formed a committee and the committee worked on that with some experts, and then simply the change, epochal change we should say in education. What we were having as a practice completely departures. Today we are talking in a very new way your educational aspects through new education policy 2020, giving degrees, what is the meaning of degree, how each student can even leave after 1 or 2 years, still he will be retained his position as the college student. All these things are given in new education policy. So that way it provides a detailed framework for teacher education programs. It emphasizes the socio-cultural context of education. So it emphasizes the socio-cultural context of education. It advocated for experiential learning and reflective practice. More and more practice is given nowadays. In all the subjects, in education also, more experiential learning, reflective practice is given. Then, what are the educational implications of this National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education? Standardized teacher education curricula across the country. I mean, in the entire country, standardized quality teacher education syllabus, curricula or educational activity, academic activities were given across the country. Standardized teacher education curricula across the country. It fostered a deeper understanding of the social and cultural dimensions of teaching. Another important aspect of this is a National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education. It fostered a deeper understanding of the social cultural dimension of teaching. Then it encouraged the development of reflective and effective teaching practices. Another implication through this particular education commission, teacher education commission, namely National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education. So it encouraged the development of reflective and effective teaching practices. Then Justice Verma Committee Report 2012. What are the important insights here? It addressed the problems of regulatory failures in teacher education. Regulatory failures means some sort of discipline should be put in teacher education. Sometimes it was the entire education program was diluted, they felt. So more regulatory conditions or regulatory rules and regulations were formed because of this Justice Verma Committee report. So it addressed the issue of regulatory failures in teacher education. It recommended stringent norms for teacher education institutions. How each educational institution, that is B.Ed or M.Ed or any other teacher education institution should behave. It gave very strict rules and regulations, stringent norms. Justice Verma Committee report through the Justice. Today it is being practiced nowadays. It is becoming more and more difficult nowadays. Even for entering into PhD studies, one needs to finish your NET. You need to pass in NET exam, isn't it? You have to pass it. Otherwise, you won't be even given an opportunity to enter into PhD program. That type of stringent norms are given in teacher education institution, in general education, in teacher education institution also. It emphasizes the quality and accountability of teacher education programs. Quality and accountability is very important. So, today plagiarism, we talk about plagiarism in research, educational research. The universities, when you are sending your thesis, they measure it. They calculate how much your thesis is plagiarized, to what degree or what percentage it has been plagiarized. That type of situation has arisen now. So what are the educational implications? It improved the regulatory framework for teacher education. It ensured higher standards and quality assurance in teacher training institutions. It promoted transparency and accountability in the teacher education sector. So that way, good things happened because of the Justice Verma Committee report. After 2015 and all, it was very much followed in all the universities. They were asking the candidates to come to the university and showed how much plagiarism was there in their thesis. They were showing the percentage, and they asked the candidates to change their thesis and submit it again. So that type of stringent norms were given because of this committee, Justice Verma committee report, right? Then so in general we see the various committees and commissions have played a very important role in shaping teacher education in India by advocating for improvements in infrastructure, curriculum, professional development and regulatory frameworks. These reforms have aimed to ensure that teachers are well prepared, continually updated and held to high ethical and professional standards, ultimately enhancing the quality of education in the country. Now, some questions we will be asking in each commission, one or two important questions. I mean, that's enough in fact. What is the theme of this particular commission? That question is given here. If you analyze that, if you examine this question, if you reflect on this question, that's more than enough for for attacking any question from these commissions. So what was one of the major recommendations of the Secondary Education Commission regarding teacher education? The introduction of compulsory teacher training, different options are given, establishment of teacher training institutes, extension of teacher education to 2 years, recruitment of untrained teachers. So what was one of the recommendations of the Secondary Education Commission regarding teacher education? That is establishment of teacher education institutions. I mean, more number of teacher educational institutions should be there, because after independence we were lacking in it. We were not having many teacher training institutes. Only after independence we began to think about it. In the British regime, they were not at all worried about it. So simply we were left helpless. But after independence, our Indian government had taken this very seriously, and they wanted to give what we call expansion of educational institutions, including training institutions. Training institutes. So the establishment of teacher training institute was the major thing that was done by this commission. So again, power cut, just let me try in some other way. Yes, it has come back. I suppose it has come back. Right. Very sorry for disturbance. I am in the rural area, the most secluded village from Uttaramerur inside, and often there is power cut. So I find it difficult sometimes to prolong my lecture in a very sustained manner. Sorry for that. You will understand me, I am sure about it. Okay. So, what is the next question? This is the one. What was one of the major recommendations of the Secondary Education Commission regarding teacher education? That is establishment of teacher training institute, expansion of educational training institutes. So that is the idea here. The Secondary Education Commission emphasized the establishment of teacher training institutes to improve the quality of education and ensure that teachers are adequately trained for secondary education. Now, with regard to Kothari Education Commission 1964-66, which of the following was a significant recommendation by the Kothari Education Commission for teacher education? Abolition of teacher training programs, integration of teacher education with universities, reduction in the duration of teacher education courses or introduction of distance education for teachers. So what is the main recommendation by the Kothari Education Commission for Teacher Education? That is integration of teacher education with the universities. It was separate. It was felt that teacher education institutions were acting in a very, very different manner away from the university structures. That is why they were talking about integration of teacher education with universities. So the Kothari Education Commission recommended integrating teacher education with universities to enhance the quality of teacher preparation and provide a more comprehensive educational experience. The National Policy of Education or National Policy on Education 1986, it was realized, implemented in 1992. Though it was proposed in 1986 in the Parliament, there was a committee, this Justice, I think, not Verma, Jagannath Mishra Committee, 1992. One more person was also the Jagannath Mishra Commission. So they were implementing what was proposed in 1986. That is why we are given 1992. So National Policy of Education was implemented in 1992. That is the idea here. So according to the National Policy of Education 1986-1992, what was a major focus area for improving teacher education? Providing free teacher education, upgrading the content and process of teacher education, limiting the entry to teacher education courses, abolishing pre-service teacher training, which is the right one. What was a major focus area for improving teacher education? Very important one. Content, upgrading the content and process of teacher education. It should be updated, in other words, updating the curricula of teacher education. That is, we have already seen that, exactly the same thing in different words. Upgrading the content and process of teacher education. That was the main focus of National Policy of Education 1986-1992. It focused on upgrading the content and process of teacher education to ensure that teachers are better prepared to meet the challenges of modern education. Now, let us discuss one question on National Commission on Teachers. What was a key recommendation of the National Commission on Teachers concerning teacher education, 1999? Reducing the number of teacher training institutions, increasing the duration of teacher education courses for 4 years, regular in-service training for teachers, discontinuing refresher courses for teachers, which would be the correct one. What was a key recommendation of the National Commission on Teachers concerning teacher education? That is regular in-service training for teachers. The National Commission on Teachers recommended regular in-service training for teachers to keep them updated with the latest educational practices and developments. The next commission, that is National Curriculum Framework 2005. The National Curriculum Framework highlighted the importance of which of the following in teacher education? Is it theoretical knowledge over practical skills, child-centered pedagogy, traditional teaching methods, minimizing use of technology in education, which is the right one? So the National Curriculum Framework 2005 highlighted what? Child-centered pedagogy. The National Curriculum Framework emphasized the importance of child-centered pedagogy in teacher education to ensure that teaching practices are focused on the needs and experiences of the child. So the very important inclusive education, so in a way child-centered pedagogy. According to the needs of the children, education should be given. So that way, among the four, which is the right one, child-centered pedagogy, the National Curriculum Framework 2005 highlighted. Then National Knowledge Commission 2007. What was one of the recommendations of the National Knowledge Commission related to teacher education? Establishing more teacher training colleges, focusing solely on urban education, enhancing the quality of teacher education programs, reducing the qualification requirements for teachers. What was one of the recommendations of the National Knowledge Commission related to teacher education? Enhancing the quality of teacher education programs. That is very important. So more and more quality was spoken about in different commissions. But this commission specifically talking about the quality of teacher education programs. So one of the recommendations. So the National Knowledge Commission 2007 recommended enhancing the quality of teacher education programs to produce better equipped teachers who can meet the demands of modern education. So the online education and all, they already started, already started giving recommendations. So National Knowledge Commission, we are talking about the computer era and all. So the modern needs of the society should be reflected in education also, they felt. So the National Knowledge Commission recommended enhancing the quality of teacher education program to produce better equipped teachers, even they should become technocrats who can meet the demands of modern education. Then Asphalt Committee Report 2009. What did the Asphalt Committee Report stress on regarding teacher education? Elimination of in-service training, stronger emphasis on foundational knowledge, reducing the focus on child psychology, discontinuing interdisciplinary approaches. What was the main focus of Yashpal Committee report with regard to teacher education? That is stronger emphasis on foundational knowledge. Very basic knowledge. I mean, the teachers also should get the mastery over the content. That is through interdisciplinary approach. That's very important. Not discontinuing interdisciplinary approach. Through interdisciplinary approaches, students should improve their foundational knowledge of their subject by incorporating various other subjects. That is the idea here. So, stronger emphasis on foundational knowledge. The Yashpal Committee report stressed the importance of a strong foundation in content knowledge and pedagogical skills for teachers to enhance the overall quality of education. So, content knowledge as well as teaching skills, pedagogical skills, teaching skills for teachers to enhance the overall quality of education. The National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education. What question you could ask? The National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education proposed which of the following changes? The shortening teacher education programs, emphasizing reflective practice and continuous professional development, abolishing technology in teacher education, decreasing the intake capacity of teacher training institutes. So, what is the focus of this National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education? So, it should be marked in some color. Yeah. So that's the idea. So what is the focus of this National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education? That is emphasizing reflective practice, in other words creative practices, and continuous professional development, ongoing learning, even for teachers. So the emphasizing reflective practice and continuous professional development, it focus. The National Curriculum Framework for Teacher Education proposed emphasizing reflective practice and continuous professional development to ensure that teachers remains effective and up to date in their teaching practices. The last one, I think, Justice Verma Committee Report 2012. Which recommendation did the Justice Verma Committee report make regarding teacher education? What commission? What is the focus? Lowering the entry qualifications for teacher education, strengthening the regulatory framework for teacher education institutions, reducing the duration of the teacher education courses, eliminating practical training from the curriculum. So, which is the focus of Justice Verma Committee report? That is strengthening the regulatory framework for teacher education institutions. So many rules and regulations came, even code of ethics for teachers, very vehemently implemented in teacher education institution even today. So the more and more pressure on the part of the education professors also, because so many things are being asked by the universities or by the government, UGC. So that way, strengthening the regulatory framework for teacher education institution. That is the focus of this Justice Verma Committee. Okay, the Justice Verma Committee report recommended strengthening the regulatory framework for teacher education institutions to ensure high standards and accountability in the preparation of teachers. I think part A is over. I mean, different commissions we have discussed. Now let us go for this part B. The part B, we are going to talk about relationship between policies and education, linkage between educational policy and national development, determinants of educational policy and process of policy formulation. There we are going to analyze the existing situation, generation of policy options, evaluation of policy options, making the policy decision, planning of policy implementation, policy impact assessment, and subsequent policy cycles. So what is the meaning of all these things, that way. So the relationship between policies and education. What is the relationship between policy and education? It is a guiding framework in education. Policies provide a guiding framework for educational institutions, ensuring that educational activities are aligned with the national goals and societal needs. Then resource allocation. Policies determine the allocation of resources, including funding, infrastructure, and human resources, essential for the functioning of educational institutions. So resource allocation. Then equity and access. Educational policies aim to ensure equity and access, addressing the problems such as gender disparity, socio-economic barriers, and regional imbalance in education. So equity and access also this policy talks about today. Of course, given the Indian situation, we need more access because there are more poor students now. Then quality and standards. Policies set standards for educational quality, including curriculum standards, teacher qualifications, and assessment methods. Quality and standard. Policies set standards for educational quality, including curriculum standards, teacher qualifications, and assessment methods. So quality and standard. Then accountability and governance. The policies we are talking about accountability, in other words, responsibility and governance. How the institutions are governed by the officials, in education. By principal and others. So that way, accountability and governance. Policies establish mechanisms for accountability and governance, ensuring transparency and efficiency in the education system. It should be open, it should be efficient, it should be responsible, accountable. No secretive measures, in the education institution. Everything should be open, transparent, to be seen by everyone. That type of accountability and governance. Now let us talk about the linkage between educational policy and national development. How it is linked, educational policy and national development. Human capital development. For that reason it is linked. Educational policies contribute to the development of human capital by equipping individuals with knowledge, skills, and competencies necessary for economic growth. So human capital development. Secondly, economic growth. Education policies that promote skill development and innovation directly contribute to economic growth and competitiveness. So for economic growth. Then social cohesion. Policies that emphasize inclusive education help foster social cohesion, reducing inequalities and promoting social stability. So that way the educational policy is linked with the education, because that is the Indian situation. So policy has to be favorable to all sections of people. So social cohesion. Policies that emphasize inclusive education help foster social cohesion, social unity, reducing inequalities and promoting social stability. For sustainable development, educational policies are aligned with the sustainable development goals, ensure that educational systems contribute to environmental sustainability and responsible citizenship. So sustainable development. Then health and well-being. Education policies that incorporate health education and awareness contribute to the overall well-being of the population. That's how, finally education should be catering to the needs of the society. So the policy of the government should be favorable to the welfare of the society through education. That is the idea here. So the health and well-being. Then what are the determinants of educational policy? How do you make educational policies? What are the factors of producing educational policies in any country? That is socio-economic factors. Economic conditions, employment rates, and income levels influence educational policy priorities and funding. How much money should be spent based on socio-economic factors. How many poor students are there, how many are not enrolled in higher education, why they are not enrolled. Then socio-economic factors come into play. So that is one of the factors for educational policy. Then political environment, that is another important. Different government, different ideologies, and accordingly the political environment also becomes the factor for educational policy. So the government ideology, political stability and leadership commitment impact policy formulation and implementation. Then cultural context. Cultural values, traditions and societal norms shape educational priorities and approaches. The present government gives more values for the culture, our ancient culture. Even the Nalanda University is being revived nowadays, that type of thing. We must go back to our roots. That is what the present central government talks about education. So the cultural context, cultural values, traditions and societal norms shape educational priorities and approaches. Then technological advancements. Technological developments drive changes in educational delivery methods and curriculum content. Then international influences, global trends, international agreements and educational benchmarks affect national policy decisions. We are not living alone. We are not in isolation. Today, the entire world has become a globalized village. Global village we call it. That means we need to be interdependent with the other countries. So even education we need to know about, even different educational structures we need to know, so that we are able to go along with the the global trends, because that's a must. There is a need of the hour today, because our students are going to different countries and then they are working there. They are working for their welfare. That way it has become international. Global value it has become. So the international influences, global trends, international agreements and educational benchmarks affect national policy decisions. Then process of policy formulation. So the next area, process. How it is processed. Policy formulation is processed. How it comes into existence, in other words. First, what is the process of policy formulation? First, we have to analyze the existing situation. Based on that only, policies come out. So, data collection and assessment, gathering data on current educational outcomes, challenges and resources. Then stakeholder engagement, involving educators, students, parents and community leaders in identifying issues and needs. We asked, the parents and other experts, or even the so-called, the village top people, and then we ask them what is the need, what is the need in education, what are the problems they are facing and how education should be changed. We are getting information from them also. So that way stakeholder engagement very much, it's a must, very important. Then generation of policy options, brainstorming and research, exploring various policy alternatives based on research, best practices and innovative approaches. Generation of policy options, brainstorming and research, exploring various policy alternatives based on research, best practices and innovative approaches. And finally we come to one point, that through various discussions we end up with one policy. So the brainstorming and research, this is how we generate the policies. Then consultation and workshops, engaging stakeholders in discussions to generate diverse policy options. That is what we did for New Education Policy 2020. That is what the government said. It had discussions all over the country, so many thousands of discussion forums. Through that they came to different points, all these things. So the consultation and workshops. Then evaluation of policy options. Very important concepts are here. Cost benefit analysis. How to evaluate policy options. How to know whether the policy is workable or not. How to understand whether the policy is effective or not. For that there is an analysis called cost benefit analysis. Assessing the financial feasibility and potential impact of each policy option. Whether we are able to spend so much for this particular educational endeavor, and whether that expenditure will fit into the outcomes. This has to be matched. So that is cost benefit analysis. So what we are investing in education, whether we will be getting back in multifold ways, in many ways. How will be maximizing our outcomes through our financial expenditure, the financial plans or expenditure for education. So the assessing the financial feasibility and potential impact of each policy aspect, that is called cost benefit analysis. In other words, less expense, more benefit, that type of thing. At a smaller level of efforts, whether we are able to reaping better results, in other words. So cost benefit analysis. Then risk assessment, another important aspect in evaluation of policy option, risk assessment. Identifying potential risks and challenges associated with each option. Of course, we have different options, policy options, but we have to understand what are the potential dangers, would be dangers, would be risk, would be difficulties. All these things, has to be analyzed. That is called a risk assessment. So this has to be done before evaluating the policy options. Then making the policy decision. How to make the policy decision? This is the policy which we are going to take. How to come to a conclusion once and for all. Prioritization and selection. Weighing the pros and cons of each option to select the most viable policy. Each policy you take and then see the good and bad things. Not bad things, good and risk, the difficulties involved, or the benefits or the difficulties, that way, pros and cons. We have to evaluate that. Then we have to make the most effective policy, most viable policy. So that is how we make the policy decision. Then approval and endorsements. Securing approval from relevant authorities and stakeholders. Once a policy is taken, it has to be approved by the relevant authority, maybe the government authorities or the cabinet, etc. Relevant authorities and stakeholders. Even the people should accept that approval and endorsement. Then planning a policy implementation. In planning a policy implementation, we come across action plan development, creating a detailed plan outlining steps, timelines and responsibilities for implementation. So in action plan development, we give everything in detail about the steps, timeline, time frames and the responsibilities for each implementation of the policy. The action plan development is that. You give a blueprint, another blueprint of the steps and timelines, all these things, action plan development. Then resource mobilization comes in planning of policy implementation, very important one. How are you going to mobilize resources or gather resources, monetary or other materials, etc. So resource mobilization is one of the important aspects here in policy implementation. Ensuring necessary resources, funds, personnel, we must have enough people, qualified people for implementing the policies. That is the idea here. Funds, personnel, materials should be available for policy implementation. That is called a resource mobilization. Then policy impact assessment. Another important thing in the syllabus, policy impact. How the policies have been effective, in education. That is called a policy impact assessment. For that we have to do certain things like monitoring and evaluation. Continuously monitoring the implementation process and evaluating outcomes against objectives. So monitoring and evaluation, continuously monitoring the implementation process and evaluating outcomes against objectives. So that has to be done in policy impact assessment. Then feedback mechanism, another important aspect of policy impact assessment is feedback mechanisms. Establishing channels for feedback from stakeholders, from people, parents, experts, to inform adjustments and improvements. So establishing channels for feedback from stakeholders to inform adjustment and improvements. So the feedback mechanism, how you are doing the feedback thing. In other words, how to get the feedback from the people, from the experts, from the students in education, like that. Feedback mechanism should be very effective. So that comes in policy impact assessment. Then subsequent policy cycles. What does this mean? Once we have implemented the policy, we should not leave it at all. After that also we have to evaluate. If there is any change to be made, we should make the change. That is the idea here. Policy cycle, subsequent policy cycle. What does this mean? Review and revision. Periodically reviewing policies based on impact assessments and evolving needs. So that comes under policy cycle. Review and revision. Periodically review the policies based on impact assessment. Outcome assessment and evolving needs. Even the needs will be changing also. Accordingly, we have to revise our policy even. That is the idea here. Subsequent policy cycle. Then sustained improvement. Using lessons learned to inform new policy cycles and continuous improvement of the education system. Using lessons learned to inform new policy cycles. We have learned some lessons through experience, and then we inform new policy cycles and the policy cycle is revised and continuous improvement is done in education. That is called the sustained improvement in education. Using our experience, in other words, using our experience in education, we change the new policy cycles, we revise the policies, and we gear towards the continuous improvement of the education system. Sustained improvement. Two things here, that is in the policy cycle: review and revision, and sustained improvement. What are the educational implications with regard to this policy and education? Improved educational outcomes. Effective policies lead to better educational outcomes, including higher literacy rates, improved academic performance, and increased graduation rates. So everything becomes of some quality. Students become highly qualitative, people of high quality. Teachers become A1 teachers with the creative pursuits. So everything becomes improved. So improved educational outcomes. So effective policies lead to better educational outcomes, including higher literacy rates and improved academic performance, increased graduation rates. So many people finish their college studies, increased graduation rates. All these things happen because of effective educational policies. Then enhanced teacher quality. Policies focused on teacher training and development. Policies focused on teacher training and development improve the quality of education delivered. Increased access and equity. Policies that address barriers to education ensure that all individuals, regardless of background, have access to quality education. Innovative practices. Policy support for technology integration and innovative teaching methods enhances learning experiences. So the increased access and equity, innovative practices, responsive education system. A well-formulated policy process ensures that the education system remains responsive to changing societal needs and global trends. So that is a responsive education system. It should be transparent and responsible. So these insights and points highlight the integral role of policies in shaping education systems and their broader impact on national development and societal well-being. Let us discuss some of the important questions here. Relationship between policies and education. For that, what question we can ask? Very important question. Which of the following best describes the relationship between educational policies and educational outcomes? Educational policies have no significant impact on educational outcomes. Educational policies are essential for setting the framework within which educational outcomes are achieved. Educational outcomes are solely determined by the individual efforts of students. Educational policies are only important for administrative purposes and do not affect classroom practices. So what should be the answer for this question, namely, which of the following best describes the relationship between educational policies and educational outcomes? So this is the one. Educational policies are essential for setting the framework within which educational outcomes are achieved. How much outcomes we should be producing in education, that is decided by educational policies. Educational policies are a must in order to get more outcomes from education, in other words. So the educational policies provide the guidelines, standards and goals for educational systems. They influence curriculum design, teaching methods, assessment practices, and resource allocation, all of which directly impact educational outcomes. So with regard to linkage between educational policy and national development, how do educational policies contribute to national development? Different alternatives are given. Do you understand the question? How do educational policies contribute to national development? What is the effect of educational policy on national development? By solely focusing on the cognitive development of students, by ensuring equitable access to quality education, which in turn fosters economic growth and social development, by concentrating on extracurricular activities and sports, by reducing the number of schools to centralized resources. What should be the correct answer? How do educational policies contribute to national development? By ensuring equitable access to quality education, which in turn fosters economic growth and social development. So equitable access to quality education, that is a must. That will foster economic growth and social development. So the educational policies that promote equitable access to quality education help build a skilled and knowledgeable workforce, which is crucial for economic growth. Additionally, education contributes to social cohesion and civic participation, which are vital for national development. Now, what are the determinants of educational policies? ஃபாதர் அப்புறம் பேசுகிறேன், இல்லை இதில் நடந்தது போயிட்டுருக்கு ஃபாதர், ரெக்கார்டிங் போயிட்டுருக்கு, ஒரு அரை மணி நேரம் கழிச்சு பேசு. What are the determinants of educational policy? Which of the following is not a determinant of educational policy? Socio-economic factors, cultural values, political ideologies, meteorological conditions. Which of the following is not a determinant of educational policy? Meteorological conditions. Cultural factors, cultural values, political ideologies are part and parcel of educational policy, determinants of educational policy. Meteorological is connected with this climatic conditions, meteorological conditions. So educational policies are influenced by socio-economic factors, cultural values and political ideologies, which shape the needs and priorities of the education system. Meteorological conditions, while they can affect the physical infrastructure, are not a primary determinant of policy formulation. With regard to the process of policy formulation, analysis of the existing situation, what question you can ask? What is the first step in the process of educational policy formulation? What is the first step in the process of educational policy formulation? Is it evaluation of policy option? Is it making the policy decision? Is it analysis of the existing situation? Is it planning of policy implementation? Of course, we need to analyze the existing situation first. Then only we can think of policy formulation. So, analysis of the existing situation is the first step in the process of educational policy formulation. The first step in policy formulation is to analyze the existing situation to identify the current problems, needs and gaps in the educational system. This analysis provides the foundation for generating and evaluating policy options. With regard to generation of policy options, which is in the syllabus, what question you can ask? Which activity is involved in the generation of policy options? Implementing the chosen policy, again the question, which activity is involved in the generation of policy option? Which activity? Is it implementing the chosen policy? Is it conducting surveys to understand stakeholder needs? Is it deciding on the final policy? Is it monitoring the impact of the policy? And what is the main activity involved in generation of policy option? That is, conducting surveys to understand stakeholder needs. We need to understand the existing situation. What are the needs of the student? What are the needs of the people in general? And what are the needs of the country itself? Based on that, we need to conduct surveys to understand stakeholder needs. First, conducting surveys. So, generating policy options involves gathering input from various stakeholders or getting information from various stakeholders through surveys, focus groups and consultations. This helps to develop a range of possible solutions to address the issues identified in the initial analysis. With regard to evaluation of policy options, during the evaluation of policy options, what criteria are commonly considered? So what are the conditions, in other words, during the evaluation of policy, what conditions you should consider, in other words? Popularity of the policy among students, feasibility, effectiveness and cost, length of the policy document, historical significance of the policy. So what is that? Feasibility, effectiveness and cost. That's very important. So during the evaluation of policy options, we need to be concerned about feasibility, whether we can do it or not, whether it is possible to do it, that is called a feasibility. Then effectiveness, whether the outcomes will be positive or not. The cost, we will be able to spend so much money. Are we capable of spending so much money on that? So the feasibility, effectiveness and cost. When evaluating policy options, it is important to consider their feasibility, practicality and ease of implementation, effectiveness, ability to achieve desired outcomes, and cost, financial implications and sustainability. Very important one. So these things are basic conditions. Before implementation of any policy, we need to be concerned about feasibility, effectiveness and cost, expenditure. With regard to making the policy decision which is in the syllabus, what question you can ask? Who typically has the final authority to make educational policy decisions in a country? Students, teachers, educational policy makers and government officials or parents. So educational policy makers and government officials. Educational policy decisions are usually made by policy makers and government officials who have the authority and responsibility to establish and enforce policy at the national and regional level. So the educational policy makers and government officials, they are the ones who will approve of our educational policy. With regard to planning of policy implementation, what question you can ask? What is a key component in the planning of policy implementation? What is the key component? What is the key part? What is the important part, important area in the planning of policy implementation? Ignoring feedback from stakeholders, developing a detailed action plan with timelines and responsibilities, immediately implementing without a plan, focusing solely on the theoretical framework. That is, developing a detailed action plan with the timelines and responsibilities. Effective policy implementation requires a detailed action plan that outlines the specific steps, timelines, responsibilities and resources needed to put the policy into practice. So, it's a blueprint, detailed blueprint of various aspects in policy. Developing a detailed action plan with the timelines, when to finish, when to start, all these things. Responsibilities of different people. So a detailed action plan should be done. For effective policy implementation requires a detailed blueprint that gives the specific steps, timelines, responsibilities of persons and resources, monetary, personal resources needed to put the policy into practice. With regard to policy impact assessment, what question you can ask? Why is policy impact assessment important? It helps to determine if the policy is popular among politicians. It provides feedback on the effectiveness of the policy and informs future policy adjustments. It delays the implementation process. It is only necessary for financial policies. So what should be the question? Answer. Why is policy impact assessment important? Why to evaluate policy at all? That is the question here. The policy impact means because of policies, so outcomes should come. And even that outcome should be assessed, whether it is up to the mark or not, whether it is enough or not. So, why is policy impact assessment important? So, idea here is that it provides feedback on the effectiveness of the policy and informs future policy adjustment. So, this policy impact assessment provides a feedback on the effectiveness of the policy and informs future policy adjustments. So there should be room for adjustment in future. The idea is that. So feedback is there. Why feedback? What are the modern trends? What are the modern needs? Whether the modern needs are addressed or not in the present policy. Whether the policy needs any change. That is feedback. So it provides feedback on the effectiveness of the policy and informs future policy adjustment. Policy impact assessment is important for understanding whether the policy is achieving its intended goals, pre-planned goals and objectives. It provides valuable data that can be used to make necessary adjustments and improvements. Finally, subsequent policy cycles. What is a subsequent policy cycle? A repeat of exact same policy process without any change. Is it true? A process of revising and updating policies based on feedback and new developments. I think we already seen that. That is the right answer. Or the final step in the policy formulation process, an optional process that is rarely needed. All these things are there. What is a subsequent policy cycle? That is a process of revising and updating policies based on feedback and new developments. Subsequent policy cycles involve revisiting and revising policies to address new challenges, incorporate feedback from impact assessments, and adapt to changing circumstances and needs. This ensures that policies remain relevant and effective. Right. I hope you have finished this. Now only we are going for the third area, namely concept of economics of education. So far we have finished part A and part B in Unit 2. Now Unit 2C. What is it about? Concept of economics of education. We give some preliminary idea, basic ideas on this issue, that is the concept of economics of education. Economics of education studies the allocation of resources in the education sector to maximize societal welfare. It applies the economic principles to analyze educational problems such as resource allocation, efficiency, equity, and the relationship between education and economic outcomes. So this is the concept, this is the meaning. The concept of economics of education applies the economic principles to analyze educational issues such as resource allocation, efficiency, equity, that is equality, and the relationship between education and economic outcomes. That is the concept of economics of education. Then here we are talking about cost benefit analysis versus cost effective analysis in education. We already done it in one of the questions. Anyhow, we will do it again also. It's a very important concept actually. Many a time they are asked in education papers, cost benefit analysis. So cost benefit analysis weighs the cost and benefits of educational activities. Interventions means activities to decide if they are economically justified or not. I mean, according to the expenditure, whether we have got the outcomes. That is the idea of this cost benefit analysis, right? I hope you understand. Cost effective analysis focuses on understanding the most efficient way to achieve educational goals with limited resources. Understand, with the limited resources, are you able to achieve efficient way, achieve educational goals in an efficient way? With the limited resources, are you going to get the most needed outcome, in other words, or whether the education is going to be very effective with the limited resources. That is cost effective analysis. I think that there is a difference between cost effective analysis and cost benefit analysis. That is more on resources, money or everything. Cost benefit analysis. How much you put as investment, how much you get. That is cost benefit analysis. Cost effective analysis means whether you are able to attain the most efficient outcomes with regard to educational goals with limited resources, comparing alternative interventions based on their cost and outcomes. There are so many alternatives between cost and outcomes, which you are taking, which option you are taking. That is cost effective analysis, comparing alternative interventions based on their cost and outcomes. I think you are able to understand this. Nothing very serious about it. Cost effective analysis focuses on finding the most efficient way to achieve educational wealth with limited resources. Please understand this point. With limited resources, you are able to get more benefits in as educational goals. Achieve educational outcome, more educational outcomes with limited resources. You are able to compare and contrast between different alternatives, between cost and outcomes, and then you take a decision on that. So cost effective analysis. Then economic returns to higher education. Higher education, so much money is invested, whether you are able to reap the consequences, the proper or the needed effects or needed outcomes in higher education according to your expenditure or according to your efforts. Economic returns to higher education. Higher education often leads to higher earnings and better job opportunities for individuals, contributing to economic growth and development. It also enhances productivity, innovation, and societal well-being, leading to positive externalities. So, the economic returns to higher education. It enhances productivity, innovation, societal well-being, leading to positive results. In other words, these are all economic returns to higher education. Then another concept called signaling theory versus human capital theory. What is signaling theory? Signaling theory suggests that education serves as a signal to employers about an individual's ability rather than solely enhancing skills or knowledge. So, signaling theory suggests that education serves as a signal to employers about an individual's ability rather than solely enhancing skills or knowledge. Human capital theory emphasizes that education increases an individual's productivity and earning potential by enhancing skills and knowledge and capabilities. What is the difference? Subtle difference is there. Signaling theory, is a signal to employees about an individual's ability, that's all. They are not worried about enhancing skills or knowledge. See, you should be already a product, good product. Then they will be taking you as an employee. Signaling theory. So the signaling theory suggests that education serves as a signal to employers about an individual's ability rather than solely enhancing skills and knowledge. Whereas human capital theory emphasizes that education increases an individual's productivity and earning potential by enhancing skills, knowledge and capabilities. So human capital theory in education suggests that as students enter into the education institution, they should be developing their skills, knowledge and capabilities for some employment later on. So that is what human capital theory talks about. This signaling theory doesn't talk about forming the students in skills, knowledge, etc. If the student comes with a certain ability, he is given employment. That is what signaling theory suggests. Whereas human capital theory, you form the students and then make them ready for employment. That is what human capital theory emphasizes. I think you understand the difference between signaling theory and human capital theory. It doesn't focus on the skills and knowledge, the signaling theory. Rather, individual ability it is taken very seriously, and then it is a signal to employees. Education serves as a signal to employees about an individual's ability. That's all. Signaling theory. Human capital theory develops the skills and knowledge and capabilities through education in order to become more effective in their employment or in the productivity for the nation. That way, human capital theory emphasizes. I hope you understand this. Then concept of educational finance. Educational finance deals with the acquisition and management of funds to support educational institutions and programs. It includes various sources of funding including government allocations, tuition fees, grants, donations and endowments. So, educational finance deals with the acquisition and management of funds to support educational institutions and programs. It includes various sources of funding including government allocation, tuition fees, grants, donations and endowments. I think you understand this. How much, how government is ready to spend, money for the welfare of the student, for welfare of the institutions, for the quality of education, etc. That is what educational finance talks about. That is the meaning of concept of educational finance. Educational finance at micro and macro level. I have told you, micro level means with regard to educational institutions, law, college, school, etc. How much resource allocation is done, how cost control is done, all these things come under micro level of educational finance. Whereas a macro level educational finance examines broader financial policies and systems governing education at the regional, national, international level, including funding mechanism, taxation and public expenditure at a broader level, at a global level, at the country's level, national level. So that is macro level educational finance. So the micro level educational finance and macro level educational finance. You understand that, of course. What is the concept of budgeting? Budgeting involves planning and allocating financial resources to achieve educational objectives efficiently. Budgeting involves planning and allocating financial resources to achieve educational objectives efficiently. It includes estimating income, forecasting expense, that is in future, expenses in future, forecasting expenses, setting priorities, and monitoring financial performance to ensure effective resource utilization. That's called a concept of budget. Budgeting always we need. We are talking about family budget even. If the family has to go on very smoothly, family budget is essential. Of course, ordinary people know about it. How much money to be saved, how much money to be spent, how much money for entertainment. Everything has to be budgeted. Then only the family will go on very smoothly without any difficulty. It will be growing and growing. So budgeting involves planning and allocating financial resources to achieve educational objectives efficiently. It includes estimating income, forecasting expenses, setting priorities, and monitoring financial performance to ensure effective resource utilization. Now let us talk about the concept of economics of education. Economics of education studies the allocation of resources in the education sector to maximize societal welfare. Economics of education studies the allocation of resources, allotment of resources, giving resources in education sector to maximize societal welfare, to make the societal welfare at the most efficient manner, in other words, to maximize societal welfare. It applies economic principles to analyze educational issues such as resource allocation, efficiency, equity, and the relationship between education and economic outcomes. So that is the concept of economics of education. Now let us, already we have done this, I think again it has come, this is a cost benefit analysis, cost effect. Very sorry that I included that. Economic returns also, just now we have spoken about it. Now some of the questions we can discuss. How does politics influence the education system? By directly hiring teachers and staff, through the formulation of educational policies and funding, by managing classroom activities, by setting student examination schedules. How does politics influence the education system? That is, through the formulation of education policies and funding, the politics influences the educational system. We may have 101 institutions, but finally the policy of the government is a must. They only can invest money for the welfare of the institution. That is why we say through the formulation of educational policies and funding, education grows and education is developed. So the politics shapes education by creating policies. Politics that means a government. Politics means government. Government shapes education by creating policies that determine the structure, content, and funding of the education system. This includes a decision about curriculum standards, teacher qualifications, and resource allocation. You have resource allocation, how much money should be allotted, that is resource allocation. So that is the answer, right? Now, which aspect of education is most directly affected by political decisions? Which aspect of education is most directly affected by political decisions? Classroom seating arrangements, extracurricular activities, curriculum standards, student social clubs. So which aspect of education is most directly affected by political decisions? That is curriculum standards, very important one. Curriculum should be of some quality, effective, it should be effective. You should really help the students to become productive. That is called the curriculum standard. So the curriculum standards are established through political processes involving policymakers and the educational authorities. These standards dictate what students need to learn at different grade levels. That is what has been done in New Education Policy 2020. How the students should be educated at the college level. Clearly it is given. The policy is given in New Education 2020. Then perspectives of politics of education: liberal perspective, conservative perspective, and critical perspective. What is the primary focus of the liberal perspective on education? Maintaining traditional values and practices, promoting equality and access to education for all, encouraging competition and individual achievement, reinforcing social hierarchies. What is the correct answer for this question? What is the primary focus of the liberal perspective on education? That is by promoting equality and access to education for all. That is liberative, no? I mean, everyone is able to get education in the country means it's a liberal policy. The government should make a liberal policy of this. I think each government is trying to make this, yes, no doubt about it. Promoting equality and access to education for all. The liberal perspective emphasizes the importance of providing equal educational opportunities to all individuals, aiming to reduce social inequalities and promote social justice. I hope you understood this. Now the next question, how does the conservative perspective view the role of education? Conservative means a very old, ancient. Who never wants any change. I mean, conservative people never want any change. So conservative perspective view of the role of education, what is the meaning? That is what the question. As a means to promote critical thinking and social change, as a tool for reinforcing established social and cultural norms, as a platform for social experimentation, as an instrument for global integration. So what should be the correct? How does the conservative perspective view the role of education? That is as a tool for reinforcing established social and cultural norms. As a tool for reinforcing established social and cultural norms. The conservative perspective tends to emphasize the preservation of traditional values and practices, viewing education as a means to maintain social order and continuity. The conservative perspective tends to emphasize the preservation of traditional values, no change. Only the traditional values should be kept. That is what it says. So education as a means to maintain social order and continue the old social order, and it should be continued. Right? That is what conservative policy talks about. Then, what is a critical perspective on the politics of education? Critical perspective means creative, revolutionary. It will be asking questions. So, critical perspective. So, it supports the status quo in educational policies. It examines how education perpetuates social inequalities. It focuses on increasing standardized testing. It aims to depoliticize the education system. What is the answer? What is a critical perspective on the politics of education? It examines how education perpetuates the social inequalities. It's awareness in the inequality of educational opportunities in education. So it examines how education perpetuates, makes it permanent, the social inequality. That is a critical perspective of the politics. Critical perspective on the politics of education. This awareness into the inequality in education. The critical perspective analyzes how educational institutions and politics can reinforce social stratification and power imbalances, advocating for transformative changes. It should be changing, according to the needs of the times. The transformative changes to promote equity and justice. So the critical perspective analyzes how educational institutions and policies can reinforce social stratification and power imbalances. With regard to approaches to understanding politics, behavioralism, theory of systems analysis, and theory of rational choice. Approaches to understanding politics. What does behavioralism focus on in political science? Institutional structures, individual actions and psychological factors, historical developments, philosophical theories. What does behavioralism focus on in political science? Behavioralism emphasizes the study of individual behaviors, attitudes and psychological processes to understand political phenomena. Of course, behaviorism we know in psychology, the same thing, but in political phenomena we are doing that. So behavioralism emphasizes the study of individual behaviors, attitudes and psychological processes to understand political phenomena. What is the primary concern of the theory of systems analysis in politics? The role of individual leaders, the interplay between various political institutions and processes, the influence of cultural traditions, the impact of international relations. What is the primary concern of the theory of systems analysis in politics? That is the interplay between various political institutions and processes. That is the correct answer. How? What is the primary concern of the theory of system analysis in politics? That is the interplay between various political institutions and processes. Systems analysis we know, no? So different parts are put together in a comprehensive manner. I mean, they are interconnected. All the parts of the system are interconnected, and then as a unified whole. Each component is very important. That is system analysis. So system analysis in education examines how different parts of a political system interact with each other, focusing on the relationship and feedback mechanism within the system. That is primary concern of the theory of systems analysis. I mean, they interact, each part is interacting with the other parts. So that's the idea here. In education also it's the same. Each part is very important. There is, administration is there, teaching process is there, students are there. All these components are integrated in education. In system analysis, theory of system analysis talks about it in education like that. So I hope you understood. Which of the following best describes the theory of rational choice in politics? What is rational choice? Thinking function. You rationalize, you think again and again, you reason out and then find out the decision. That is called a rational choice, right? So, what is the meaning of the theory of rational choice in politics? We are talking about politics. It emphasizes the unpredictability of human behavior. It assumes individuals make decisions based on their preferences and constraints. It focuses on the historical context of political decisions. It relies on emotional and cultural factors in decision making. So, which of the following best describes the theory of rational choice in politics? So, that's the idea, no? It relies on emotional and cultural factors in decision making. Is it true? Now, what is the question again? What best describes the theory of rational choice? Otherwise, the meaning of the theory of rational choice. The correct answer is this. This theory of rational choice assumes individuals make decisions based on their preferences and constraints. Particularly an individual, thinks about what he likes and what are the difficulties involved in that choice. This is how he reasons out. So the theory of rational choice, assumes that individuals make decisions based on their preferences, likes and dislikes, isn't it? Likes and the difficulties, constraints. Based on that, they take the decision. So, rational choice theory holds that individuals act in their own best interest, making decisions by weighing the costs and benefits of various options within given constraints. I hope you understood this. Then education for political development and political socialism, that is part D actually. I haven't given it. Say I'm not giving any theory here because it doesn't need that. We can understand very easily this concept. So straight away through the question we can understand the theory. So how does education contribute to political development? So that is part D in UNIT-2, education for political development and political socialization. How does education contribute to political development? By solely focusing on vocational training, by fostering civic skills and knowledge about political systems, by avoiding any political content, by limiting critical thinking and debate. How does education contribute to political development? In what manner, education helps in the implementation of the policy of the government, in other words. That's how we can rephrase. Correct answer, by fostering civic skills and knowledge about political system. Very important one. Through education, we foster in the students civic skills. The societal skills, in other words, civic skills and knowledge about political systems. So education plays a crucial role in political development by teaching students about their rights and responsibilities, the functioning of political institutions, and encouraging active participation in the political process. So by fostering civic skills and knowledge about political systems, education can contribute to the development of the politics. In other words, the governmental policy. What is the role of political socialization in education? What is political socialization? It's the awareness of the political situation in the country. that is the role of political socialization. To indoctrinate students with a particular political ideology, to expose students to multiple perspectives and encourage independent thought, and to eliminate political content from the curriculum, to prioritize economic skills over civic education. So what is the right answer? What is the role of political socialization in education? That is to expose students to multiple perspectives, different viewpoints in the country, and encourage independent thought. After having known various perspectives on in the society on different issues, and he comes to his own independent thought. He decides on his own, in other words. So to expose students to multiple perspectives and encourage independent thought in the students, that is the role of political socialization in education. Yeah, thank you very much, dear friends. God bless you abundantly. I think we have covered the entire unit in a most brief manner, but very essential points have been given. I think this is more than enough to understand Unit 2, and you will be able to answer any question under this. What I have given is the most important points and the most important questions that could be coming from this section. That is what I have attempted to do. Of course, other questions I will be giving in different video lectures, but in order to understand the basic concept, this video will be enough, I hope. Please go through this, and then you can ask some give some suggestion, ask some questions in the groups or in email ID I have given. In so many ways you can let me know, what you understand this, or how you understand this, in what manner I should give such courses. Please give it to me, so that I am able to do it. One thing, somebody has said in the comment, Father Sir, you are having old style of teaching. It is very much true. I am not using any modern technological assets, which I don't know actually. I am learning it, yes. So far I have learned something new, yes, no doubt. But so many new things I have to learn. So somebody has told me, this is an old way of teaching. Of course, I consider this as the best way of teaching, because this is what I know. And I give all the necessary points, and then I give some points. So whether it is old or new, this is what I can do at the moment. I hope you understand this. If you don't understand, tell me how I should go. And the modern technological aspects I yet to know. I am already learning, yes. I hope to do it nicely also in the days to come. New things I am learning, no doubt. At the age of 65, it's really an exciting moment for me to learn all such things. And this is one type of technology I have developed. Because, if I give in a small bit ideas, small packages, you will not get a comprehensive idea. That is my fear. Now, in order to give you a comprehensive view, I have to resort to this type of lecture, where I speak about all the concepts necessary in the topic and then explain it with some model questions. You will be getting the comprehensive idea. Of course, some questions, some students have expressed that this way they are learning a lot, something like. But some students feel that I am a person of I am doing in the old style, I am teaching in the old style, people say that, but I accept that, because at the age of 65, this is what I have learned. I will be learning new things, no doubt about it. Soon I will be giving you some modern ways of teaching you, I am sure, but for the time being, I am preparing you for the exams. That's what I am doing. Thank you very much for your support. Please subscribe so that my videos get more and more value. God bless you abundantly. Thank you very much, dear friends. Let us meet in other video lectures.